Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. I'm Don Arleth, and you're watching World News, coming to you live from Warsaw. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen's late-night phone call with U.S. President Donald Trump led to an almost one-month delay of the 50% tariffs slapped on European products. Despite the good news, it's not the end of those long-distance trade phone calls. Now let's go to our correspondent, our EU correspondent, Angela Skujins, who's in Brussels. Good afternoon, Angela. So what happens next? Sorry, we had a little bit of technical difficulties on that one, so let's go ahead and move on. Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico is sounding the alarm. He warned that the U.S.-EU trade war could cost Slovakia up to 20,000 jobs, with the automotive sector facing the worst effects.
Fico's warning comes as tensions rise over the potential for American tariffs on EU goods, including a devastating high in the 25% tariffs already placed on Slovak-made vehicles. As the seventh largest car producer in the world, Slovakia's economy is heavily reliant on the automotive industry, and the threat of tariffs doubling is a nightmare scenario. Fico has made it clear that Slovakia will need to intensify relations with free trade nations and diversify its exports in order to shield itself from this looming crisis.
And now let's try and rejoin our correspondent there in Brussels after European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen's late-night phone call with the U.S. President Donald Trump, adding a one-month delay to the 50% tariff slapped on European products. Good afternoon there, Angela. Now that we have you, please do tell us what happens next.
Yes, so crunch time negotiations is what is on the agenda between the US and the EU regarding this new chapter in that escalating trade war. So it comes off the back of that Sunday night phone call between US President Donald Trump and the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. We got an update today that this phone call was spearheaded by the EU Executive Chief. Now discussions will continue to hopefully find an end to this tariff trade-off, first spearheaded by US President Donald Trump on Liberation Day when he announced that 20% import levy expected to be slapped on most EU goods, which was of course responded in kind by the EU with a three-tier tranche of reciprocal tariffs. There is currently a stalemate, a 90-day pause on these measures, which will wind up on the 9th of July. That is when that 50% tariff threatened by the US will come into effect if these dialogues shut down. But let's take a listen to what the European Commission chief spokesperson Paula Pinho had to say regarding those next steps.
We have a very good negotiating team in place led by Commissioner Šefčovič, who is bringing forward the discussions. This was now the moment for a contact at President's level. And in the meantime, the discussions will continue as early as already this afternoon, where Commissioner Šefčovič will have a call with Secretary for Trade Lutnick.
Now, the Brussels press corps is desperately trying to find an update regarding these trade talks scheduled for this afternoon. We haven't heard anything yet, but we do know the next scheduled face-to-face meeting between the EU's tariff negotiator, Maroš Šefčovič, as well as Howard Lutnick, his counterpart in the US, will take place in July in Paris. We're hoping for a more fruitful outcome regarding this trillion-dollar transatlantic trade war that will hopefully end up for good news between European businesses and traders. Reuters is also reporting today that Šefčovič was meant to speak with some of those big car makers such as Mercedes and BMW. Hopefully he will have good news for them. That's all from me in Brussels. I'll send it back to you in Warsaw.
Angela Skujins reporting there from Brussels. Thanks for your report. Now, ahead of his trip to the United States, Polish Defense Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz announced that discussions with U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth would focus on Poland's security, defense contracts with the U.S., and continued support for Ukraine. He highlighted the strengthening of Poland's relations with the United States, noting that American guarantees in Poland's role as a key European partner are growing stronger and stronger every day.
It has also strongly resonated in the United States, where Poland is being cited as an example of solidarity and of major investments in national security and allied relations. We've received official thanks for the involvement of Polish soldiers in the rescue mission in Lithuania, where American troops were injured and, ultimately, lost their lives. Poland was the first to offer help, and the US Secretary of Defense issued formal thanks to us, to the Polish armed forces and to Poland. I wanted to share that today, along with the invitation we've received to the Pentagon. The talks held a few weeks ago by Minister Zalewski with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth are also contributing to the strengthening of these ties. I don't think there's another country in the world that has had such frequent opportunities to meet with its US counterparts. No other defence minister has had the chance to host the new Secretary of Defence and, within 3 months, receive an invitation to visit Washington and the Pentagon.
The right-wing candidate in Poland's presidential election, Karol Nawrocki, on Monday threatened to sue the media organization that reported allegations that he had helped procure prostitutes for guests of the Grand Hotel in Sopot when he worked there as a security guard. He dismissed the claims as, quote, a pack of lies.
Opposition Conservative Law and Justice presidential candidate Karol Nawrocki has taken to X to deny media reports he helped procure prostitutes for guests while working at a hotel, saying,
"The problem in Poland today is political prostitution by those who would sell out Poland for foreign money. I intend to file a civil defamation suit against Onet for publishing this pack of lies and pursue private litigation. Tusk and Trzaskowski's media henchmen won't rob us of our victory."
The Onet PL site spoke to 2 former associates who claimed Nawrocki helped bring prostitutes for guests at the Grand Hotel in Sopot when he worked there as a security guard. Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk criticised what he called Nawrocki's dangerous liaisons.
These recurring reports of the candidate's disturbing relationships with the criminal underworld are causing quite a stir worldwide. It's a serious matter and has ultimately little to do with local politics or the election, but weighs heavily on Poland's reputation. And that's very important to me, because I'm keenly aware of how much Poland stands to win in international relations due to our efforts to build trust for the country. We are an incredibly valued partner around the globe. I looked at press titles today from Dubai to New York City, from Iceland to some African countries, and basically all of them carried some sort of news about what's happening in Poland and the issues around this candidate. So the problem is obvious.
It's not the first controversy to hit Nawrocki on the campaign trail. Less than a week ago, it emerged that he took part in an organised large-scale football hooligan fight in 2009. And in early May, he faced scrutiny over acquiring a flat from an elderly neighbour and using a museum apartment for free. Nawrocki is running neck and neck with the ruling Civic Coalition candidate in Poland's presidential race, Rafał Trzaskowski. The runoff round in the high-stakes election to become Poland's next president takes place on Sunday, June 1st.
Polish footballer Robert Lewandowski has surpassed a milestone of 100 goals for FC Barcelona. The moment came last evening during a match against Athletic Bilbao, which the Catalans convincingly won 3-0.
The 37-year-old Polish striker scored his 100th and 101st goal during yesterday's game at Estadio de San Mamés in Bilbao. Lewandowski said after the match that the team had a nearly perfect season and now it is time to take in the moment. Though Barcelona won this year's La Liga title, due to an injury at the tail end of the season, Lewandowski missed out on the top scorer title. This went to his rival from Real Madrid, the French sensation Kylian Mbappe.
And that concludes this edition of World News, but do stay tuned because The Bottom Line with Marie Cato is coming up next.